Hello, everyone. So, hello, and yeah, welcome to this live stream about doing live streams, picking software to run a business live stream is apparently much harder than it is, much harder than I thought it would be. So, partially to get rid of my frustration and hopefully even more so to help you do this in a better way. I just wanted to help you out and share the things that I've learned in the last couple of weeks in picking live stream tools, and hopefully that will be of benefit to you. So in 1 hour, you will understand what to look for in live stream tools. You will know how to connect these tools, because we'll soon learn you'll probably need more than just one simple tool, and you'll need to be able, or you will be able to select your own just based on knowledge, but I'll also provide a tool to do this. During the session you can ask questions. Let me enable the Q&A. Oh, that's fun. Google changed the URL for this, so let me quickly fix that. I mean, it's a live stream, right? That's what it's all about. So Google changed the URL, so I'll need to change that redirect for you, so you can actually ask questions during this this live stream. Let me first remove the old one, and I'll add the new redirect for you. There you go. And that should be published in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So if you now have any questions for this, you can go to gui.do/q, and there you'll see a Google pop-up. So you'll see how to ask the questions. Let's continue. So a live stream. When we're talking about live stream, what we're talking about here in this context of this this presentation, there's video and audio. It's public. That's an important one. So I'm not going to talk about doing a group call within your company or something. The goal here is to live stream to the rest of the world through platforms like YouTube or LinkedIn or Twitch. And the third one is that it's actually live. So we're not sending out pre-recorded videos. It's all live. So those are the boundaries of what the software that we are looking for here. And you might ask yourself, well, if you've ever opened YouTube and searched for live stream tools, you might have seen these kinds of tools. So yes, I have. I've seen them all, and they are nice, but they don't really work if you have very specific needs. For example, you can have the top 5 Mac live stream tools, but if they don't support, for example, hosting a guest or sharing your screen, if that's what you want, then that doesn't really help. It can be a great top 5, but it doesn't help you. So yeah, I've seen those videos, but they didn't help me. So I need something more to do, and did some more research on this. And to be clear, live streaming, it can be very simple. If it's just your face, your head, your video, your audio, then it's extremely simple. If that's it, then you can go live on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, Vimeo Live. They have a browser version. You can just log in, enable your webcam in the browser, click go live, and that's it. Then you're live. But you probably need something more, otherwise you wouldn't be here. So for example, if you would want to have 4K streaming, and if you want to invite guests, and all those guests need to be able to share their screen, and if they not only share their screen, but you also want to use a studio tool that's not based on your PC or on your Mac, but you want to have it browser based, for example. For whatever reason, and we'll dive into that later. But for whatever reason, you want to have a browser-based SaaS solution like Streamyard or Lightstream. This cannot be done. Already, this example is something you cannot do with the existing tools. So it will be very helpful, instead of going through each and every tool, demo them, just to be able to filter, to play around with the filters, your requirements, to see what pops up and what works and what doesn't. So maybe you can lower your 4K to 180p, and that helps. So at the end of this presentation, I will show you all we'll show you a tool that I made. So I started out making a big spreadsheet, but I ended up making a website. I'm going to reveal this tool to you, and it not only works with single tools, but also works with suggesting tool combinations that might work for you based on your filters, based on your needs. And the best of all, it's going to be free. So that's going to be nice. And I'm going to show that at the end of the live stream. For a quick note for those who don't know who I am, I'm just a psychologist working in e-commerce, doing optimization, running a lot of experiments. I occasionally do podcasts. I organize events. I'm very infrequent live streamer and a no-code developer. I'm definitely not a pro streamer. I'm not paid by any of these tools, just so you know. I'm a client of some of those tools. But I spend a lot of time, a lot of research the last couple of weeks to bring this together. So hopefully it'll save you a lot of time. So my goal for this particular webinar, help people that want to start with live stream or go beyond just streaming their own webcam feed. And I'm gonna aim it more at the business side. I'm not gonna necessarily talk about doing this for gaming purposes. Those have different requirements. It's mainly about doing this for business purposes, sharing whatever you've learned, sharing a presentation, doing some screen sharing based on business needs usually. I'm going to try to educate you on the considerations that you need to make, the trade-offs that you'll have to make, so you can make your own choice. Again, you can watch those videos with the top 5, but you want to make your own choice. If you have some features above just sharing your own website, your own webcam, you'll probably want to have some more information, and you need that knowledge to do that. And I'm going to end up with sharing this selection tool with you. To be clear, I'm not going to talk about, I'm not going to do in-depth tool reviews. You can see that on the website that I made. You can get some more information on the tool, but I'm not going to talk about that today. I'm not necessarily going to talk about mobile streaming. Some of the tools do support this. I'm going to assume you're going to be in at least have a desktop, not necessarily a studio, but at least a desktop situation with a full screen browser available. And I'm not necessarily going to talk about the gear or the hardware that you need, like microphones or webcams. That's not the point here. It's about selecting the software. So a couple of steps we're going to take. I'm going to take you bit, and you're already here, so you probably already know it's quite a confusing landscape of live stream tools. I'm going to talk about the choices and their impacts. I'm going to take you through an example case. You know my thought process and how you can copy that for yourself, and do a conclusion, a wrap up, and show you the new live stream website. So the landscape. Let's start with that one. So basically, when you want to do a live stream, there's a couple of things you'll need, 4 main parts for this. First one, you need to capture something, usually a webcam. You need to capture audio, maybe a screen share, but the content that you want to share, you need to capture that. The second one that you'll need is an encoder. You need to encode that so it's ready to be streamed, basically. Usually this is done by studio software, so you don't necessarily need studio software, but it's usually something that you read. And studio software will be something to make it more fancy, add some branding, those kind of things. Third part that you need is streaming it, actually putting it out there. So after encoding, it needs to get out there on the internet. Maybe you want to do that to one platform, can be just YouTube, just LinkedIn, or maybe you want to do that to multiple platforms. And the fourth one is the actual publication platform. Like I said, we were focusing on live streams here, how people are doing this internally, that's fine, but I'm talking about live streams here. How are you going to be pushing these streams, these videos out on the public networks like YouTube, Vimeo, Twitch, LinkedIn, whatever. And it pretty much looks like this. There are a lot of tools. A lot of tools out there. And the confusing thing is that you don't just have tools that do capture, just encoding or studio or just multistream or are just a publication platform. There's a lot of overlap in there. And when I started out, like I said, I started out with doing a spreadsheet, and in my mind, I wanted to catalog them. I wanted to label them. Are you a studio program? Are you a capture program? Are you a multistream? And what you see here, there are tools. Some of them are capture, some of them are multistream and capture. Some are a broadcast platform and also capture, but are not a studio. It's very confusing. You have all these different kinds of tools, and it's really hard to figure out how they fit in. Especially, like I said, there are gaps in here. The red ones are the gaps, functionality that they don't offer. So how do I fill in that gap? So for example, Zoom, they do capture. They also do streaming, actually. You can use Zoom to directly live stream to YouTube, but it's not a studio tool. You cannot add any overlays or effects or something. There's Restream. They do multistream, the dedicated multistream service, but you can also log into their browser and just open up your webcam and start streaming. Then there's actual conference tools that like Hopin or Big Marker. So they're aimed at capturing, doing this with multiple people, having multiple people share screens. They're really good at that, and they do stream sometimes even multi-stream, but they're not a studio. You cannot add overlays or any branding to it. And like I said, something simple like YouTube, you can just go to YouTube and do live stream. So to me, this was very, very confusing. And to make it more complicated, of course, it doesn't stop there. If you want to add branding overlays, you need a studio tool. You might want a start and an end screen. You might want to have widgets like a countdown timer. You might want scene transitions. So if you want to have different scenes, so for example, one scene will be your start screen, the next screen will be something you're looking at right now, and you might have an ending screen. You want to switch between those. There might be a screen transition that you want to use. You might want to use macros or keyboard screenshots to switch between scenes. So instead of every time going into your studio software and clicking the right buttons to make that scene transition happen, you might actually want to use something like an Elgato Stream Deck, which has dedicated keys. You can just press one thing to go to another one scene and press another key to go to another scene, and dedicated buttons for that. Can be very, very useful. You might want to have audience interaction, like chat. That might be very useful if you want some involvement with your audience. Another one is adding remote guests with a webcam and screen shares. That adds another layer of difficulty. And some of those tools will allow you to add guests. But most of them don't allow screen shares. And if they do allow screen shares, they don't always allow you to still view that person's face, but instead of their webcam feed, you only get to see their screen share and you lose their face. And depending on your use case, that might not be what you want. And the third one, so the multi-stream, you want to share to multiple platforms. Not every studio, for example, supports all platforms. So you need to be sure that your platform that you want to stream to, where your audience is listening, that it's supported. And the fourth layer is, like I said, you probably need to combine tools. and not all tools can be combined. Not all tools support having an output that another tool can then ingest. I see already Matthijs Kok is listening. Hello, Matthijs. Hope you're learning something today. And so, by the way, if you have any comments or questions, look at the screen. You can ask your questions live, or just use the comments if you're not watching this live. Please use the comments and I'll read them later on YouTube or LinkedIn or Twitter. So let's continue with the choices that you need to make and their impact. The 6 elements that you need to think about, 6 categories. So we'll have the sources, if you want to have guests and in what way, where you want to stream destinations, the video quality, the studio operating system. Do you have a Mac, Windows, or a browser? And some other category of other features that you might want. And then the connecting layer, the ability to connect those apps. So let's start with sources. So since we're talking about a live stream and you want to share video and audio, your own video and audio will always be shared. That's basically, that's the boundary. If you don't do this, then we have disregarded you as an option to do live streaming. So this is always something that you need. There's always a source you want to include. But you might also want to add a screen share. So whatever is on available on your desktop in any program, can be a browser or another program that you're running, can be a game, of course, anything you want to share there. You also might want to include an actual web page for more interaction. There are services that provide you with tools, for example, that when you have a new subscriber on YouTube, you get a pop-up. Those all work through embedding a web page, just an URL. So your studio tool will need to support adding a URL and then displaying whatever is shown on that URL. And actually, this can also be used through OBS Ninja. I'll get back to that, but with OBS Ninja to actually include webcam feed from another, for example, from a guest. But that has multiple uses. But maybe for whatever user it is, including a web page URL can be a different source that you want to have available. So for guests, actually, do you want guests? How many guests do you want? Do you want video and audio? Assuming it's not just a podcast, video and audio. How do they connect? Some apps support only work through a specific app that someone needs to install, like Skype or Zoom, or maybe even a mobile app. Or would you be more comfortable, and it's usually easier if that person is not needed or required to install an app, but just click on the link, open their browser, and join your session. Usually through a modern browser like Firefox or Chrome. And do you want them to share your screen? And if so, like I said, if they're sharing the screen, do you still want to be able to capture their face and show that on screen? Those are the things you want to think about for guests. And the stream destinations, there's a lot of them. Do you want one destination or multiple destinations? That's a choice that you need to make. There are various names for this: simulcast, multicast, multistream. That's what you're looking for if that's what you want. RTMP output, so as a stream destination. So, for example, if your streaming program doesn't support your required output, but your required output, for example, YouTube, you want to stream to YouTube, but your studio platform doesn't support YouTube. But if your studio platform does support RTMP output, YouTube does support RTMP input, so you could use that to connect those apps. So that might be an important one. RTMP stands for real-time messaging protocol and it's used for streaming audio, video, and data over the internet. So it's a generic protocol. I think it's actually owned by Adobe, but it's available for everyone to use. So it's a very useful way to connect apps over the internet. And the last one for stream destination, a short note on LinkedIn and Instagram. I'll get back to that, but first Restream. So RIverside is an example of a multicast, multi-stream service. So basically you send out your stream to Restream. That's just one stream you send out to Restream. So you only need the bandwidth for sending stuff over to Restream, and then Restream will take care of the distribution through whatever service you want to distribute it to. That can be very useful if you have, for example, bandwidth limitations. So native versus dedicated multistream. So you have native multistream in the sense that some software studio platforms support this, like OBS. You can use OBS to stream to YouTube and Twitch, and a variety of platforms all at once. But there are some considerations that you need to make here. So either you'll use the native option in your studio tool, or you use a dedicated streaming service like Restream. That's just online. You need one channel to stream to them, and then they'll take it from there. So most studios natively support streams to multiple broadcast platforms, and most of them support RTMP. So that's good. And this RTMP is also the way that those multi-stream platforms ingest your stream. So for example, Restream, they use RTMP input for that. So a consideration that you need to make, local, if you want to do this locally, so if you have a local streaming program, local studio, this requires way more bandwidth and processing power if you stream to multiple destinations. That makes sense, right? If you want to stream to 6 destinations from your home computer, you probably need 6 times the bandwidth to pull that off. So instead of that, you can just use that bandwidth once to go to an online Restream service and distribute from there. So not to bog down your bandwidth. Same for processing power. Different streaming destinations might require different resolutions. So you want to stream 4K on YouTube, but maybe 180p on Vimeo, or and then 720 on Facebook. That all needs to be encoded on your computer. That takes up processing power. So if you need to do that locally, that takes a very powerful machine. And you might even need a dual setup to do that, a dual PC setup to be able to pull that off. So in that sense, it makes it easier to use an online multi-stream service. So if you want to use a local tool and multi-stream, I would definitely advise to go with a multi-stream provider. If you don't have a fiber connection. The bonus benefit of having a SaaS multi-stream provider is that you can go live with actually being live. So often, what happened to me quite often is that once you push live, your studio software does something weird, and then the end stream doesn't really look like what you expected it to look. And actually, with a restreaming tool, you push go live in your studio software, then you go live, as in you stream to your multi-stream tool. You see the output there, and there you can still decide to actually go live, yes or no. So that's an extra step. But for me, that makes sense. That feels a bit more safe to actually see the output of my studio appear in my multi-stream tool before I actually go live. So, like I said, I have a note on LinkedIn streaming and Instagram streaming. So for LinkedIn, these are the options. These are the only options to stream live on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn doesn't support RTMP inputs. It only works through a select partner network, and these are the only tools that are supported for LinkedIn. For example, if you want to filter this, let's see the tools that can do this for free, then there's only one left. That's Streamyard. Streamyard is the only free studio tool to go live on LinkedIn. So if you want to spend no money and want to go live on LinkedIn, Streamyard is basically your only option. The second note on Instagram. Instagram works through RTMP, but the thing is, RTMP, Instagram doesn't tell you what the RTMP URL and stream key is that you need to insert into your studio software. So you'll need a third party to basically reverse engineer this and tell you what the stream URL and stream key is. There are tools doing this, but you might feel already where this is going. If you need a third-party tool to reverse engineer it, and Instagram doesn't really support this themselves, they don't, and because it's against their actual terms of service. So you can use those tools to live stream on Instagram from your desktop, but it's like I said, it's against their terms of service. So it might, and you might end up being blocked on those platforms. On LinkedIn. Of course, you can just go live through their native app. That's what it's intended to do. You can go live on the Instagram app, but it's not meant to be a desktop streaming solution. So you might end up with a banned account. So take it, do this at your own risk. The fourth one, video quality considerations. Of course, there's resolution. And basically for streaming, roughly this goes from 720p until 4K. Those are basically the of course, and you can do anything in between. For many tools, you can, if you use a studio tool on your desktop, you can usually select any dimension, but these are the most common ones. I think for YouTube, you can actually start live streaming starting at 240p, which is very low. So what you need to consider here is the lower you go, there's less detail, but also lower bandwidth requirements. So if you're strict on bandwidth, you might go error on the lower side here. But if you need more detail, higher bandwidth requirement might be. You can pull it off, the higher bandwidth requirement, then that's fine. So for example, if you want to share a screen or I do websites reviews. So when we do website reviews, you would want to share in at least 1080p. Otherwise, you cannot really read what's on the screen if it's 720p or maybe even lower. So 1080p is advised for when you do things that people need to read off the screen, like I'm doing right now. Side note: no browser-based tool provides 4K. So if 4K is a requirement for you, you can skip all the browser-based studio tools. You will need a dedicated studio tool on your Mac or PC. So that would be OBS, vCam. OBS, vMix, Ecamm for the Mac, Wirecast. Those are the tools that support 4K, and only YouTube allows 4K ingest, and maybe also Vimeo, by the way. So those are the limitations there. And basically also what you need to consider with the higher the resolution, so your bandwidth requirement goes up with the number of pixels. It's quite simple there. Due to compression, it's not a completely linear relationship, but roughly speaking, if you double the amount of pixels, you double the amount of bandwidth you need. And when you go from 720 to 1080p, that's a 2.25 times increase in pixels. And when you go from 1080p to 4K, it's a 4-time increase in pixels and thus in bandwidth. Then we go to frame rate, and frame rate usually connected to resolution. Those two make up the bandwidth that you end up with. And these roughly, again, there's a range here, but you roughly for online streaming, you go from 30 frames per second to 60 frames per second. On the low end, you have more motion blur, but you need less bandwidth. Higher end, less motion blur, and higher bandwidth requirement. And usually 30p is usually fine for just business and showing slides or having talking ads. That's fine. 30p is fine unless you go for streaming gameplay. 60p is probably not really needed. Oh yeah, and by the way, so again for this, if you go to 60, that practically doubles the required bandwidth. So the impact on your system is also something that you need to consider, especially again if you're doing this locally. Think about both the encoding and the bandwidth that you need for this. So roughly, if you combine them, you can go from 720p 30 to 4K 60. And here's some example bandwidth requirements. So on the low end, you need an upload requirement, so be aware of that. Usually bandwidth from your local internet provider will be mentioned in download speed, but you'll need upload speed for this, so be mindful of that. So you need 2 to 5 Mbps upload for that. If you are on the low end, if you're on the high end, it's a whole different ball game. You might need up to around 60 Mbps upload speed to pull that off. And my internet connection definitely cannot do that. I don't have fiber, unfortunately, and I cannot do that. And YouTube is the only one supporting 4K 60 anyway. Just go to speedtest website, speedtest.net, I think, or files.com, and you'll be able to check out your internet speed, upload speed. Yeah, and notes usually for business, audio quality is really way more important, unless of course you're doing screen share, or maybe where the letters might be quite small, like going through websites, doing a website review. Of course, the screen is really important there. But if it's just two people talking to each other, if you want people to watch that, like at a conference or maybe a panel, if it's just faces, the audio is way more important than the video anyway. So the studio operating system, you can do it locally. Which means that basically you become the main point of failure, and but usually you'll have way more features if you have a studio tool. Way more powerful tools are available on your desktop than are in your browser. And what I mean by you're the main point of failure, if your tool crashes, or your complete system crashes, your live stream is done. It is the end. In contrast, if you have a browser-based tool and your browser crashes, usually you can just reopen your browser, reopen that URL, and you're back in business. The live stream was still going on. Your guests are still there. Things are still happening. So that might be a consideration for you. Do you want to have more stability if your home system might not be that stable, or do you want more features? And we'll get back to those features in a bit. So the other option is browser SaaS tool. You'll need a modern browser to do this. Chrome, if you have Chrome, it updates automatically, so that shouldn't be an issue. Usually those tools require Chrome. I think there's something, I don't know what, but something special in Chrome that has people excited, and have those developers mainly support Chrome. Otherwise, a new version of Firefox usually works too. But that's basically the requirement, and almost all guests have that, right? So that's usually not a problem to connect. The other last consideration is do you want to connect people or guests from mobile? Whether it's Android or iOS, do people maybe you have like mobile reporters in the field, if that's your kind of jam, or like at a conference you want to have employees walk around with mobile, that can be a consideration. So there are tools offering that too. If you want that, that's something you'll need to add. So the last category, other. You might want to have some customization options, like I said, video overlays, scenes, transitions, and usually there might be some basic options available in your local system or in your browser-based studio, but local tools usually have way more options here. The shortcuts, do you need shortcuts? Like I said, it can be very useful just to press one button on your Elgato Stream Deck or just a shortcut on your keyboard to switch scenes, for example, or to have some kind of effect instead of clicking through a studio interface. If that's what you like, you'll probably need a local tool. Most browser tools don't support any shortcuts. So that can be really inconvenient if you need to go through different scenes. Some don't even support scenes. But if you want to switch, you need to go through multiple clicks to do that. That can be really annoying if you're also at the time hosting the show. If you have a different producer, a separate person producing the show, that might not be an issue for you. But if you're hosting the show and need to do that, that can be really annoying. So you might need to consider a local tool for those shortcuts. And the last one only applies for local tools and only for Windows machines. If you have NVENC hardware encoding, some tools support this, some don't. It's if you don't have it, don't mind. It's fine. But if you do have a video GPU in your desktop that supports NVIDIA NVENC hardware encoding, you ideally want to use a tool like OBS that supports this. So the whole encoding process that we just spoke about can be done on a dedicated chip, and that will save you a lot of CPU power. So that will make your system way more smoother if you have this enabled. So those are some of the considerations that you might want to make. So the last part there is connecting those apps. And there are a couple of ways of doing this. So locally, you can use a virtual cam. So for example, I could use OBS or Ecamm if you're on a Mac. Do whatever you want to do there, build your whole scene and output that as a virtual cam. Basically, you create a camera in your system, so your system thinks that you have an additional webcam, which is actually the output of your studio, and then you can include that webcam in whatever tool you're using. So you could use that output to go to your YouTube browser and start streaming there. That's a very viable option for that, or use it in Zoom, for example, and use it in there. But of course, if you use it in Zoom and you have multiple people, the only screen that you actually can add overlays to is your own window, your own webcam feed. So there's nothing that's going to be added to the feed of the other person. But it's something that you might want to use for certain use cases. The other one also locally is NDI. This lossless streaming over your local network is really good. So you can basically use multiple computers to use them as a source and bring them together on another computer. So you could, I can have a laptop downstairs, open the webcam there, use NDI to stream it over my local network. I can pick that up in my desktop over here and include that video stream in my studio. And of course, that might not be the most logical use case, but if you're at a conference, for example, you have multiple conference rooms, for example, or multiple angles, you want to connect them. You could use this, most studio settings use SDI for this, cables, but you can also use NDI for this. It can be very useful if you have a multi-camera setup, especially, again, if you have one system that's not powerful enough, you want to offload that to other systems. So you can have Zoom running on one machine, capture that whole scene with NDI, stream that over your network to another PC for a studio. So that works locally. Then to things that work over the internet, RTMP, I mentioned that before, compressed streaming over the internet, a standard that most studio tools and most publication platforms use to ingest. And you can also use a browser screen, so simple URL inclusion. Like I said before, you can use this for including of chats, inclusion of pop-up messages like, oh, I have a new follower on YouTube, or even a webcam feed from a user through a tool like OBS Ninja. and these will work over the internet. Now, there's actually a fifth way of doing this, but I definitely recommend against it, or try to avoid it as much as possible, which is display or window capture. So most studio tools that work locally, you can just capture a screen. That works fine if that screen is very static, but for example, it already doesn't work if you work with something like Zoom or Google Meet or whatever, because things tend to move around within that scene. To show you some examples, so in Google Meet, the person, so me, if I'm streaming, well, there's two me's in here, but there's a me streaming on the top right. That's the person, that's my own view, and I would see my guest, which is in this case is also me, and that's the one full screen. So if I'm capturing this through a screen capture, I only see the person on the other side. I don't see myself, and you might want to see yourself too, and use that in the stream too. So that's not really useful. You only see your guests and not yourself. Another option would be, for example, Zoom. And Zoom works fine if it's just talking heads, then it's relatively stable. But it goes wrong when, for example, one guest drops out and then it's redistributed again. Or one guest starts sharing a screen, then it's redistributed all over again. Then you see the main screen share at the bottom, and then you see your guests, everyone in the call on top. And that's fine unless you have overlays. If you have overlays for example, each screen, or for example, you have overlays with the name of that person, if that webcam keeps moving around, your name doesn't automatically track where that webcam feed is going if you use display capture. So that doesn't really, it's not a really nice solution. So ideally, if you do this, scenes and overlays need to be in the same tool as the webcam screen share, otherwise these go out of sync. So keep that in mind if you want to do this. Unless one exception here would be Skype using NDI, because what Skype does, in contrast to, for example, Zoom, you need to do screen capture. Skype, you don't need to do screen capture. What Skype does is for every participant, it sends out an NDI stream, which you can then capture with your studio software. So for the host, for your guest 1, guest 2, guest 3, and even screen share 1, screen share 2, screen share 3, those are different NDI streams in Skype. So you can capture those, put those in nice overlays in your studio tool, or maybe even different scenes, and neatly switch between them without your sources going all over the place. You're in control with this one. So that was a lot of information already, and almost at the end. So let's just take you through the case that started this all for me, so you get an idea of my thought process. And I'll teach you how to do this for yourself. Again, to be very clear, it can be really simple if it's just you, just your face. Go to YouTube, Vimeo, or Facebook. Go live on those platforms. It's free. Go for it. But my case, what I wanted to do, I just mentioned it. I want to host a multi-stream with 2 or 3 or 4 non-techie speakers that can share their screen, all share their screen, to share basically a website, so we can review them, and have unified overlay scenes to switch between. So if person A is talking, I can show I can show everyone with person A screen share. If person B takes over, I want to share their screen, and just push of a button, and then I'll see their screen share. So we can start out with this, multiple people, and Again, if this is all you need, go with Zoom or something. Multiple people, that's fine. I want to be able to share their screens and still be able to see their faces, because it's a web shop review. We're reviewing stuff. It's about the expression people make. We're discussing this, so you want to be able to see everyone while going through this website, doing this review process. And I want to have unified overlays. I want to maybe have a call to action, live audience chat, maybe a countdown timer. What we did was we did a website review. Every 10 minutes we switch to a different website, so I have a countdown timer in there. That's what I'm looking for. So what do I need? Scenes and overlays. I want a system that supports guest screen share. Want a browser login for guests, so it's easy for them to log in, not use any tools for that they don't maybe not have, and stream to LinkedIn Live, Facebook group, and YouTube. Or again, have at least an RTMP output, so you can use this to stream to restream and take it from there. And what I also want is to be able to switch between those scenes and overlays with my Elgato Stream Deck. And also for the screen share node there, wanted to have at least 180p, 1080p, 1080p 30 resolution to have a readable screen there. So yeah, those are my requirements. So I filled this in my new tool, which I'll share in a bit. And basically there are a couple of options, not a lot. I currently have 31 tools in there. If you want to do this with the least amount of tools possible, then it's basically only Wirecast that can do this. Wirecast, they have their capture options. It's a powerful studio, an encoder. They have built-in multistream. And I can go through LinkedIn, YouTube, and also Facebook. The only downside for Wirecast will be the cost. It's $5.99 to start with, and then $99 yearly for updates, which might be worth it, of course, especially if you want it all in one tool. That can be a very appealing offer. But if you, in contrast with the alternative, so there's also a free alternative, but you'll need to be able to connect a couple of tools. You either use Skype or OBS Ninja as input. So for Skype, people would need to install something if they don't have it, but a lot of people have Skype, so that might not be a huge issue. Not something new everyone needs to use. Or OBS Ninja. OBS Ninja is a browser-based tool, so you just create a URL where people log in. Or they don't even need to log in. They just go there and add their webcam, add access to the webcam and audio, and they're in, and you receive a URL. So you can include that in your studio tool. That studio tool then can be OBS or Streamlabs OBS, which is a flavor of OBS. You can use that as an encoder. And then since both these encoders don't support LinkedIn, which is a requirement for me, I need to use another tool, a multi-stream tool that supports LinkedIn, which in this case is Restream. And this is now complete. And this only costs $49 a month. So that's much less compared to the Wirecast solution, which is $600 plus $100 yearly. So this is my resolution. And I would love for you to find your ideal solution. Like I said, there are a lot of different use cases. This was just one of a lot of them. I've made this tool so you're able to drill down on the needs that you have for your tool. What I've made is livestream.guide. So not my first name, it's just guide. They're related, but it's guide. And you can compare livestream software tools in there. So right now there are 31 studio tools and related tools in there that you can use. And you can just filter down and it will show you the tools that fit your needs. Oh, what might be good to know? It also shows tool. It also shows tool combinations. I think currently I have around 20 tool combinations there. Of course, with 31 tools, there's an infinite amount almost of tool combinations. So not every combination is in there, but those that make sense for the most use cases, those are things that are already in there. So they can help you suggest a combination that works for you. So almost there. Almost at the 1 hour mark, so perfectly on time. Closing, I have a couple of workarounds ideas if you need them. So the first one would be to use different input streams for your webcam versus your screen share, so you can control them in your studio. So what I mean by that is a workaround. So for example, in Zoom, if for whatever reason you do want to use display capture, and you'll notice if you share your own screen in Zoom, basically your Zoom window disappears and it shows you your screen, because that's what you're sharing, and you'll have this small pop-up with the faces, the webcam feeds of your guests, but your screen is gone. To prevent this, you can use a second laptop or desktop, log into the same meeting. So on your desktop, you could capture the whole screen, and on your laptop, you could log into the same meeting and share your screen on there. In that case, you don't have you don't lose your screen capture of all the webcams on your desktop. It's not a neat solution, but if you need it, if you need to save some bucks, so you cannot upgrade to Wirecast, this might be a workable solution for you. So it's a workaround. It's not perfect. The second one is to use different PCs. I mentioned it before, but use different PCs to capture and use NDI. This is a really powerful one. A lot of studios actually use this. Only works on your local network again, but if you're in, for example, a conference center or something, this can be a really powerful alternative to using SDI cables. And the last workaround would be to you can actually use or run OBS or vMix in the cloud using for example an Amazon image. You run it in the cloud. So these are local tools, but you can run them in the cloud if you don't have the bandwidth locally. Of course, this requires quite some knowledge on how to set that up. There are a lot of tutorials out there on how to do this. I haven't tried it. I found it on Reddit, found it a very intriguing way of doing this. So you can both have the power of having a full-blown studio solution like OBS or vMix or Wirecast, but run it on a cloud computer, so you don't have to you're not bogging down all your local bandwidth, and restreaming. You might not need a restream tool for that, because it's all built in the studio and you're not limited by the bandwidth. Of course, you need to pay for that, but that might be a nice workaround solution for you if you're technically inclined and interested in doing that. If you like this, thanks. First off, livestream.guide is also published on Product Hunt today. If you like that, please vote there for the tool. Go to livestream.guide/Product Hunt, or it's also on top right corner. If you go to the website, there's a button there where you can vote for it. And the last one is, if you have any questions, any live questions. Of course, if you're live right now, ask them in the chat. If you're watching this afterwards, you can also put them in the chat, and I'll look at them afterwards, both on LinkedIn, Twitter, or LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Put them in the comments and I'll answer them. Thanks so much. I'll put this presentation live too, so you can click on the links. There's some last slide with some resources in there. And you can read up. Also, a tip for the website itself: if you click through, if you've done filtering and you click through to the individual scenes, They will they'll provide you with some interesting information. There's dedicated information that you can click through on a lot of things, and you can find more information on the tools, what their limitations are, what their options are, what their possibilities are with those tools, and how they connect also to other tools. That information should be in there. If you're missing something, please let me know. Give me your feedback on how to make this a better tool. So that's it for me. We're through our 1 hour live stream, and I hope this was useful to you. I hope to speak to you soon. Goodbye.